Right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, freedom fighters. My name is President Heminger. Today is Monday, March 18th. The time is 7:03 p.m. This is the March General Membership Meeting of the NAACP Arlington Branch. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, we have President Heminger, who is present. First Vice President James Younger.
Present.
Second Vice President Morel Langhorne.
Office of the General Counsel.
Morel Langhorne.
But there's nothing.
Secretary Lundy Younger present.
A unit from working with organizations like
this evening.
actually do that work.
There is some other voice I cannot. Did you call Treasurer, Madam Secretary?
I did.
I'm here. I'm sorry. Does
Thank
anybody else hear this? There's like another voice coming.
Yes, we did.
Oh, okay.
Executive Committee at Large, Karen Nightingale. Karen Nightingale. Executive Committee at Large, Kellen McBeth. Kellen McBeth. Executive Committee at Large, Nadia Conyers. Nadia Conyers. Communications, Leah Matterall will not be present today. Criminal Justice, Legal Redress, Amy Stitzel.
Hi, everyone. I'm here. Thanks.
Thank you. Economic Development and Labor, Gary Gaston.
Here.
Education, Tia Alfred.
Present.
Environmental and Climate Justice, J.D. Spain. J.D. Spain. I believe will be with us a little later this evening. Health, Tasia Iglesias. Tasia Iglesias. Housing, Chair Wells Harrell will not be with us this evening. Political Action, Jan Marie Pena.
Present.
Religious Affairs, Pastor Davis.
Present.
Religious Affairs, Rosa Dunkley.
Present.
That concludes our roll call.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good evening, Pastor Davis. Would you mind opening the membership up with a brief word of prayer? A word of prayer, I apologize.
Absolutely, Mr. President. It's an honor to be able to pray with you and for our community. I'm going to share a prayer tonight that was written by Dr. King, and he shared it before a very important meeting of the SCLC many years ago. Keep us, we pray, in perfect peace. Help us to walk together, pray together, sing together, and live together until that day when all God's children, Black, white, red, yellow, and all, will rejoice in one common band of humanity in the kingdom of our Lord and of our God. Let the people who belong to you say amen and amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Davis. I appreciate that. I'm a big fan of Dr. King, so I certainly appreciate that. All right, I'm going to keep us moving along. I'm working off multiple monitors, so if you see me looking to the side, I'm just trying to keep us moving. So next up, I'm going to seek a motion to suspend the rules. The National Association has established a very clear way of conducting meetings. However, our executive committee has adopted a different agenda. In order for us to continue, we would need to suspend the rules. So would a member like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to suspend rules.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Is there a second? Thank you. Who was that, Sister Dunkley?
Yes.
Thank you, Sister. All right, there's a motion on the floor. It's been properly moved and seconded. The motion is to suspend the rules to proceed with the March General Membership Meeting that the Executive Committee has adopted. It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Will all those members in favor of suspending the rules, would you please say aye?
Aye.
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 And all that oppose, you have the same right. Are there any abstentions? Madam Secretary, please let the record reflect that that was a unanimous vote. Madam Treasurer, the floor is yours to present the February 2024 financial report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna be looking at my another monitor also, so I'm looking over here to the side. Let's see, it's hard to read the report. Can we zoom in?
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, if you move to the right, so I can see the balances. Yep. And keep going. Yep, thank you. So our balances here for the month of February. For our operations account, we had a beginning balance of $6,339.16. We had deposits and withdrawals that left with a balance of $9,464.21. For our reserves account, there was no change. And for the scholarships account, we paid out $30,000 in scholarships. So our beginning balance was $255,322.04. Our ending balance is $225,322.04. And that is the February report.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Are there any motions?
I make a motion to accept the February treasurer's report subject to audit.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to accept the treasurer's report as presented and subject to audit. Would any member like to second that?
I'll second
Who was that?
that. Gaston.
Thank you, Mr. Gaston. All right, there's a motion on the floor. It's properly moved and seconded to accept the February financial report as presented and subject to audit. Will all those members in favor of this motion, would you please say aye?
Aye.
And all those that oppose have the same right? And anyone abstaining? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Any other updates from you tonight?
Thank you. Just want to update the branch. We submitted our annual financial report to national on time. And we're also in the process of doing a financial audit internal to our branch. So we're in the process of doing that.
All right, awesome. And I just wanted to recognize our treasurer. We're one of the first branches in the Commonwealth, maybe in the country, to file our report and get it accepted by national. So again, just a testament of the strength of this branch. Really proud of all the work that went into that. Our treasurer and a lot of folks on this call, they don't often get recognized for the good work that they do. But Madam Treasurer, I truly appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna bring up the slide deck one more time, so bear with me as I get this going. I just wanted to make a couple announcements on what the branch has been up to. So let's see here. Madam Secretary, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. For those of you that are not a member, I want to encourage you to do so. Arlington is one of the most active branches in the entire country. We won several national awards, and we continue to grow and make a difference in our community. So if you're not a member, I want to encourage you to do that. Beyond that, there is an opportunity to become what's called a Silver Life member. Hang on one sec, folks. My technology is not working with me. I'm going to restart this. All right, let's see here. Let me see if I can get this to work. Okay, so we have a couple members that we'd like to recognize, more than a couple actually. These are our Silver Life members. They have essentially paid their membership to the NAACP for the rest of their life. They don't have to renew their membership. These are our most loyal and strongest and boldest supporters. So if you don't see your name up here and you want to see it, I encourage you to become a Silver Life member. And our regular membership is $30 a year. Unfortunately, there's no way to automatically renew it. So if you haven't renewed your membership in the last 12 months, you may not be a member, I encourage you to reach out to myself, the secretary or assistant secretary. We'd be happy to take a look to see if your membership is current. We know how important this election year is for the nation. We're going to need all hands on deck. And so I think, many of us can afford to give up our coffee or, eating out a couple days a week to join the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization. All right, next up, I want to just bring us to a couple announcements around communications. We're going to be standing up a very robust committee. In a second, I'm going to show you just some internal numbers that reflect our reach. And as we kind of get these folks properly appointed to this committee, I expect for the profile of our branch and the work that we're doing to be raised even more. So we are bringing on a press and public relations advisor. We're going to be appointing 2 newsletter editors, 2 new graphic designers. We have a youth council rep that's going to join to help us make sure that our voice is relevant to our young people. And then we also are bringing on someone that's going to lead in strategy. And so all of these folks will support in communication. And our communication chair, Leah Matterall, will be leading all of these individuals. And so I want to bring your attention next just to some communication performance that our branch has attained over the last couple weeks and months. And so in the top left, what you'll see is a reach of about 10,000, and you'll see the date is actually a couple weeks old. This has ticked up to about 14,000. So, we can see the work of our communication committees already coming to life. We can see when our audience and our followers are engaging with us. And so you can see on a daily basis, on average, 22 to 2,400 people are engaging with or interacting with the posts that we're putting on Facebook. We're going to continue to, drive this reach and engagement on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, and really all the social media platforms. On the right, you'll just see some age demographics of who is engaging with us. And you'll see at the very top, our 18 to 24-year-olds, we're not able to reach them effectively. And so that voice of the Youth Council is going to be extremely important. Next up, I want to just call your attention to a new appointment that has been confirmed. I recommended that Mr. Gary Gaston be appointed to chair the Economic Development and Labor Committee, and the Executive Committee did ratify and confirm his appointment. If this is something that you're interested in or you want to learn more about, Mr. Gaston's email is on the screen now. And Gary, did you want to take a couple moments just to introduce yourself to the membership and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're up to?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, respected colleagues. I am Gary Gaston, and just to give you a little snapshot about me, I born in Columbus, Georgia. Both parents died before I was 9. I was in a foster home, joined the military when I was 17. I did 23 years in the military. Once I left the military from Fort Hood, Texas, I opened a liquor store for a brief period of time, and I closed it down after about 2 years because I was killing the community. I didn't feel good doing that. And I accepted a job at the University of Georgia in the ROTC department in Athens, Georgia. Go Bulldogs. And I was there for about 2 years. And I started applying for federal jobs. And I was selected for a job with Selective Service System, which brought me to Washington, D.C. And I was in that agency for about 5 years. And when I left there, I went to OPM, Office of Personnel Management. They are the overseers of the federal government, enforce policy. I was with OPM for about a year, and I left and went to Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, where I was an equal opportunity officer, labor relations, employee relations, and recruitment manager, focusing on hiring veterans and persons with a disability. I retired at minimum retirement age, October the 31st of 2019. You know, minimum retirement age in the federal government is on or about around 56. So I was able to do this at 56. And now I own 2 businesses. I own a G3 Global Career Coach. We teach people how to gain employment, primarily federal employment. We conduct weekly, monthly webinars on the federal hiring process. We do career coaching, hiring events, live and virtual. And I'm also the principal broker of Joint Command Realty. I've been a real estate agent for about 17 years. Last year, June the 1st, I started my own brokerage. We're right here in Crystal City, and we are looking for brokers and agents. But as your chair for the Economic Development Committee, I need your support. I'm looking for team members to join. There's a lot of things that we can do out in the community, such as small business support programs, financial empowerment seminars, home ownership seminars, career development and recruitment and outreach events, affordable housing and community development webinars, workshops, and establishing partnerships with the small business owners within the community. But again, my email is here on the screen. If you've been a part of this committee, reach out to me, and I'm looking for new committee members as well, so we can get to work. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, as you can see, folks, he is a very accomplished freedom fighter, very esteemed. I have no doubt that this committee is going to do some great work this year. So again, if you want to join this committee, you want to learn more, I encourage you to reach out to Mr. Gary, and he'll get you plugged in. All right, I'm going to move us on to just an announcement for tonight. We're having a public safety and legislative update. We're also celebrating Women's History Month, so we're really excited to have both of these speakers with us this evening. Save the date. We are going to have our 3rd annual Fair Housing Conference on April 20th. Every year it's been getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we are, it's a good problem to have, but we're looking for a space that can hold everyone. So we're going to be really talking about fair housing, the updates, especially last year. There was a lot that happened at both the federal level and the local level. You don't want to miss this. So save the date. We hope to see you there. There's more information on our website and social media as well. You can also send an email to housing@arlingtonnaacp.com. We're going to have a conversation with the Department of Housing and Urban Development as well. So housing equity best practices. Again, I want to encourage you to save the date. This is really an honor to be able to get a speaker from the federal level to come in and speak to us at our local branch. Again, it just demonstrates the strength of our branch. Next, I want to move us to the 2nd annual Community Oversight Board. I guess a celebration. We can call it a celebration. As you'll remember, that our branch was extremely active in getting this board established in our community. Either tomorrow or the next day, there will be an article that comes out in RL Now, just kind of discussing the current state of the Community Oversight Board. And I wanted to take a moment just to read the statement to you, or as much as I can. So look for this in RL Now, either tomorrow or the next day. You're getting an early sneak peek. All right, so NAACP reiterates its call for Arlington County to produce a broader version of the ordinance governing the independent police auditor and the Community Oversight Board. For months last year, our elected leaders took secretive actions to attempt to amend Chapter 69 ordinance. The board attempted to skirt their legal obligation to publicly advertise the proposed changes by claiming that the changes were administrative in nature. Nothing could be further from the truth. The NAACP counted over 170 proposed changes, with hundreds of words removed and hundreds of words added. What's worse is that the county attempted to conceal these changes by listing the changes to the ordinance on the consent agenda, silencing dozens of community voices that joined the call from the NAACP, the ACLU, Arlington for Justice, the Public Defender, and many more on producing a fair and just ordinance. Not a single member of the public had any opportunity to engage or provide input on the 170 changes that were made last year. So I'll stop there. This entire statement is going to be coming out. We are calling on Arlington County Board to take 4 steps. The first being that all stakeholders be brought to the table. So as the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization, we have a vested interest in this ordinance, but we want to see all community members and all community organizations and all stakeholders brought to the table before any changes are made. We also believe that the independent police auditor and the community oversight board must be funded at least 1% of what the police department's budget is. This aligns with guidance from national experts in civilian oversight of law enforcement, but our board is not quite there yet. In fact, it's actually losing funding. So our third request is that the independent police auditor be granted the authority to publicly release a report following an investigation. Arlington's auditor is one of the only auditors in the entire nation that does not have this authority. And so the NAACP believes that trust in law enforcement is eroded when sufficient oversight does not exist. And then lastly, we're calling on the county board to ensure that the independent police auditor and the community oversight board be provided with unfettered access to police records as a component of their oversight responsibilities. Again, this is not an advisory commission, it's an oversight body. And so we believe that the ordinance was never intended in letter or spirit to limit access to these records. And so those are our 4 asks. Stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more that happens. The last thing I'll say about this was, sadly in Arlington, this kind of happened under the cover of night. No one really knew that this was going on. And if you're at our December and January meetings, you'll recall that we discussed this, but it wasn't until 40 hours before that board meeting that the changes to that ordinance actually got released to the public. And then beyond that, the changes were placed on what's called a consent agenda. And so that means that several items are going to get voted on at one time without ever really discussing it. And so we feel like this is a very important ordinance to our community. We feel like, again, all stakeholders should be at the table. I encourage you to attend this celebration on March 20th, 2024. This body is pretty significant for our community. The Community Oversight Board did meet this week. I'm not going to go into detail about what happened, but the board did vote unanimously in opposition or indifference to discipline that the police department had decided. So if you want more information, all that's on Arlington County's website. We're certainly paying attention. Save the date, our annual Freedom Fund banquet is going to be held on October 5, 2024 at 6 p.m. again at George Mason University, the Arlington campus. You'll remember last year this event did sell out within 3 weeks. So save the date. Members will get early bird pricing and access to tickets and VIP tickets. So if you're not a member of the NAACP, I want to encourage you to do that as well. And then lastly, just some press from the last meeting. Tragically, there were a lot of hate messages that were being drawn in the community on people's hoods, yards, graffiti, really hate messages all over the community. So a few of us, more than a few of us, the community kind of came together and kind of said, hate has no place here. So just some press from the last meeting as well. That's it for the announcements. I want to transition over to our Youth Council advisor to see if there are any updates from the Youth Council. Madam Chair. Are you with us, Youth Council advisor? All right. We'll come back to her. She may be having some technical difficulties. At this time, I'd like to bring up the Honorable Delegate Adele McClure. And let me just read her bio real quick. I know we all know who she is. Delegate Adele McClure is the daughter of a resilient early childhood educator and the daughter of a Filipino immigrant who served in the U.S. Army. She was raised along the Route 1 corridor in Northern Virginia, where she experienced poverty and periodic homelessness not far from where she currently lives in Arlington now. It's an experience that has made her a fierce advocate, and her legislation this year definitely backs that up for vulnerable populations. Through the lens of her community activism and her many lived experiences, Adele has worked with advocates, stakeholders, and members of the Virginia General Assembly to draft, pass, and implement legislation that breaks down systemic barriers, expands human rights, and improves access to services for people in Arlington and across the Commonwealth of Virginia. She serves as both the first Black person since the Reconstruction and the first Asian person to represent Arlington County in the Virginia General Assembly. So I got to turn the floor over to you, Delegate. But before I do, I just got to let you know that we are so proud of you. I mean, you tore it up. I mean, and it's not very often that we see freshman legislators that get in there and get bills introduced, get bills passed. But yeah, like you did your thing. So we're so proud of you. I want to turn the floor over to you to kind of just give us an update on how things went down in Richmond.
Thank you. So appreciate that generous introduction, and also such an honor to be here with you all, and to have an honor to have served in that legislative session, especially under the first Black speaker of the oldest continuous legislative body in the Western Hemisphere, Speaker Don Scott. And so I was very honored to second the motion to make him speaker designee prior to him becoming speaker of the House of Delegates in Virginia. So it's just been a tremendous honor to serve there. And then we introduced, or me and my team, we put in 15 bills, which is a lot for a freshman, especially the heavy bills that I ended up putting in. And I'll go over that in just a minute. And so I think that, Mr. President, there is a slideshow presentation that you all have on your end, if you could bring up for me. And then I can, look at that, the little headshot. Then I can give y'all a little bit of a deep dive. I wanted to, I know that we're going to have the Honorable Parisa Dehghani-Tafti talk about the public safety update, but I also wanted to give a public safety update in addition to my legislative update, because I also serve on the Public Safety Committee. So this is my first legislative session as a freshman. I am also serving on a number of different committees that normally freshmen don't get to serve on. So I'm on some pretty powerful committees. One is General Laws. That is where all of the housing legislation comes through, procurement, a lot of the administrative stuff, a ton of the other bills that don't fit into the other categories come through general law. So we see a ton of legislation through that committee. And then I serve on about 2 or 3 subcommittees there. So in total, I serve on about 6 committees. But the 3 main ones are general laws, public safety, and then I'm on the firearms subcommittee of public safety. So I see all the gun violence prevention stuff. And then I also serve on transportation. So extremely important to this region, to Arlington. So I'm very proud to serve on both of those, or all of those committees. So just to kind of get started, if you can hit the next slide, I wanted to go over some criminal justice reform bills that passed the General Assembly that I was proud to cast a vote for, either in subcommittee, committee, or on the House floor. And so if you wanted to take a screenshot of these bills and kind of follow their progress, just to give you, and this is just a highlight, give you an update of kind of where we are, is we had a number of bills that passed both the House and the Senate and are now on the governor's desk. He did hand down a number of vetoes, a number of amendments, and he still has to make decisions up until April 8th on a number of different bills. So right now, we've passed a lot of good legislation. It's up to him whether or not he signs it or what he does with that legislation. And then we did pass a budget. We passed it out on time, which is really, really, really key to make sure that we have that budget in effect by the time our fiscal year begins. And so we'll be coming back to the legislative session on April the 17th. So I set that date aside. And so we'll be taking action on any amendments that the governor has in the budget. We'll be taking action on any amendments that he has to bills or any vetoes. So we'll vote to either sustain or reject those vetoes that he has, or override them. And so just to give you a couple of highlights on the criminal justice reform bills that we passed, The first one, HB 45, is by Delegate Seabold, and it clarifies Speaker Scott's 2020 bill to make sure that pretrial detention time is included in earned sentence credit calculations as it was originally intended. And then also HB 159. This is a really important one. I got to vote for this in the Public Safety Committee. I got to vote to advance it to the next step, which then headed to the House floor and then worked its way through the Senate. But it restricts the deployment of patrol dogs to attack incarcerated individuals in Virginia. And many people don't know this, but Virginia actually leads the nation, where attack dogs bit incarcerated people at 295 incidents since 2017. And that's 295 incidents. And Arizona comes in second in the nation at 15 incidents. So that's 295 Virginia, second is Arizona at 15, which is completely inexcusable. It's horrible. And so again, I had the chance to vote in committee to move this bill forward and get it passed in the General Assembly. So very proud that we got that out of the General Assembly. Now it's headed to the governor's desk, and so we'll see what action he takes on that. Next, we have HB 246, which is Delegate Mike Jones. This bill makes fines, penalties, and other costs associated with criminal and traffic cases more transparent. We have HB 457 by my freshman colleague, Delegate Carlson. It establishes criteria for the mandatory reduction of probation periods, including the defendant's participation in educational activities, maintaining employment, completing a mental health or substance use disorder treatment program, and good conduct. We also have Delegate Price's HB 614, which creates community service work opportunities, which could be participated in during incarceration in lieu of payment of fines and costs. And it's a step towards making criminal consequences more meaningful and restorative for both the incarcerated person and the Commonwealth. And then we have HB 824, which from Delegate Cousins eliminates court-appointed counsel fees for those among us who are most financially vulnerable. And then Delegate Cole had a solitary confinement bill that requires that before placing an incarcerated person in restorative housing or isolated confinement for their own protection, the facility administrator will place an incarcerated person in a less restrictive setting. And so the bill requires that if an incarcerated person is placed in restorative housing, the placement will be reviewed every 48 hours, and the facility administrator will ensure that the incarcerated person receives medical and mental health evaluations from a certified medical and mental health professionals within 1 working day of placement. And so that was a really important bill that we got passed out from Delegate Cole. And if you can hit the next slide, please. The next slide, just a couple of highlights on some public safety bills that were passed out. HB 2, which I was a chief co-patron of, that one is related to prohibiting the purchase, sale, or transfer of assault firearms and certain ammunition. Very important bill, one of the top priorities of the both the House and Senate Democratic caucuses. So we got that one out, also headed to the governor's desk. We also have HB 163 by Delegate Cole. Requires that public, this is one that I was a chief co-patron on as well, requires that public institutions of higher education maintain and annually update a webpage with contact information for emergency services, mental health care, and include URLs on all student IDs, which I thought was a really, really simple but extremely effective idea that won't cost any additional dollars. Another one is HB 175. Delegate Simon, and it prohibits the carrying of semi-automatic assault firearms in public places, any public street, sidewalk, park, etc. And then we have HB 215 by Delegate Watts that develops some sexual harassment training modules for high school students. And then if you can hit the next slide, please. So these highlights are the bills that I carried and got passed through the General Assembly. Specifically related to justice reform or court reform, and then some public safety bills. So HB 362, really important. I actually gave a floor speech on the last day of session in anticipation that this may be vetoed, but it prevents individuals convicted of assault and battery against an intimate or dating partner from purchasing or possessing firearms. We have this in the code, but dating partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, they are not included in the definition of family. And so therefore, there is a loophole that is created. And just because someone isn't married doesn't mean that they don't deserve the protection from domestic abusers who should not have firearms. So this bill is to disarm domestic abusers. And so I was proud to get that passed the House and the Senate, headed to the governor's desk. Another bill that I passed, HB 586, creates a statewide model policy and training standards for law enforcement officers to prevent opioid overdose deaths using naloxone. And, I got my start in this particular space in the Arlington Community Services Board. I've served on the Substance Use Disorder Committee for the last 7 years. And so I know the importance of making sure that you have those model policy standards. We do not have statewide training standards. We actually haven't had standards like this updated since the 90s. So I was very proud to put this legislation in and get that passed. Another one that I got passed is HB 893. This is a very important one that I was very proud to carry the torch on. It increases compensation rates for court-appointed parent counsel in child dependency cases. And Virginia rates had not been increased in over 20 years and are currently the lowest in the nation at $120. The attorney who is representing the parent in a child dependency case gets $120 per stage. And this disproportionately impacts Black parents and families. And so in addition to raising the pay rate for the court-appointed counsel, it also directs the courts and the Virginia State Bar to create standards of practice for court-appointed parent counsel, which is extremely important because you have guardian ad litem who you have one list where they are required to also do parent counsel, and you have training for this, the guardian ad litems who represent children, but you do not have training standards for those who represent parents. And not everybody on this list wants to represent parents. So to create two separate lists so that it's more efficient and you have more attorneys that are trained specifically to support parents so that we are making sure that these kids are not going into the foster care system, which actually costs us a lot more money in the long run. So again, once these standards have been established, the courts will have access to that new list of practitioners who are trained and qualified to represent parents in child dependency cases. And it also allows localities to draw down on federal funding to develop and oversee some law offices for the purpose of representing parents and supporting them mentally during these proceedings if they choose. And so that's an extremely important one that I know that people have carried for, I think, over a decade. And there are a number of attorneys that came together and told me that they have been trying for years and years and years and years to get this passed. And we finally got it passed with bipartisan support. So that's one of the ones that I am proudest of. Because it's going to make a huge difference in so many families' lives that we may not know, but just really proud that could be in place so that we can also save the Commonwealth money in the long run. Another thing that's going to save the Commonwealth money in the long run is HB 1252, which in 2021 we passed sensible probation reform legislation carried by Mr. Speaker, intended to ensure that multiple technical violations arising from a single incident would be considered together at the same hearing. And so some judges, it was brought to my attention from Justice Ford and some folks in Arlington that some judges have skirted the current probation law by holding separate hearings for each technical violation included in a single violation report, which enables them and allows them to impose a sentence of 14 days for each violation. So people are being held in custody, awaiting those revocation hearings for longer than the maximum sentence than they could receive, which literally just creates way more jail time, completely unnecessary, and wastes a ton of funding and costs the Commonwealth a lot of money. And so people should not be held and just tethered to the criminal justice system for nonviolent technical violations. And so that's one that I was proud to get passed, and I got some bipartisan support for that as well. And if you can hit the next slide, please. Thank you. And then these are the rest of the bills that I got passed. HB 157, that was a really, really important one to me. That was actually my first bill. Also the first bill that drew debate on the House floor in this legislative session. So it was very spicy. I drew a lot of the kind of heavy hitter legislators who have been out or in the General Assembly for a very long time. And this was specifically finally including farm workers and temporary foreign workers in the Virginia Minimum Wage Act, which, you know, shouldn't sound that controversial, but apparently it's extremely controversial because in 1938, on the federal level, we excluded farm workers from receiving the minimum wage, and there are a lot of other exclusions when it comes to them. And this was rooted in the Jim Crow era, and it was a pro-segregation policy. And so a lot of states adopted this policy. It's wrong. And these are some of the hardest working folks in not just the nation, but in Virginia. And so a lot of these states who adopted it, about 30 got rid of these exemptions and finally did the right thing and included farm workers who can receive the minimum wage. And so for the first time in history, you know, there have been multiple people who have carried the torch and have carried this bill, and we have not gotten it past the Senate. And so I got it out of the Senate committee and out of the Senate body as a whole. So we, for the first time, passed it out of the General Assembly, and I'm very, very, very proud of that bill. It heads to the governor's desk. We'll see what he does with that. But a lot of farm workers and hardworking Virginians all across the Commonwealth are just feeling heard and seen, because they, you know, they're working so hard, and some of them legally can earn only $3 an hour for all of that hard work that they're doing. And so that's HB 157. And then HB 368 is my single stairway exit bill. This was actually brought to me by Jason and some members of the NAACP Arlington Housing Committee. And you know, I was very proud to carry that bill that would allow for or set in the path to allow for single stairway exits for better use of land, more multifamily housing. So it's an innovative way to create more housing and use land more efficiently, which in the long run will create more affordable housing. So I'm proud of that one. And that's also been a nationwide issue that we have talked about. And so Virginia is a leader in that currently. HB 405 is another bill that I passed, and that specifically will make sure that we have the infrastructure and make sure that we're evaluating it to ensure that we lay the groundwork for expanding more electric vehicle charging stations everywhere, because we are headed in that direction, and we need to make sure that we have the proper electrical distribution infrastructure there. So I was proud to work with environmental community groups and developers to come bring this bill together and get that passed on a bipartisan level. The other bill that I got passed was HB 588, which actually was born out of Arlington. There was an issue that happened in Crystal Plaza. You can read more about it on Arlington Now, where 68 units received a notice to leave in 2 weeks because there was a fire in the boiler room. I worked with the landlord. I worked with tenant advocates, legal aid attorneys to come up with a bill that would prevent people from being abruptly displaced following a fire or casualty event. And so I was very proud to come have peace in the valley and bring everybody together to come up with some common sense legislation that will protect tenants. Another one, this is really important, HB 817, which strengthens protections, expands the definition of retaliatory acts, and also shifts the burden from the tenant to the landlord to prove those retaliatory acts, because it is really tough for a tenant to get in the head of a landlord and say the landlord intended to do this or intended to do that. And the landlord typically has way more evidence to prove that they didn't intend to conduct a retaliatory act. So that's super important because it gives a tenant at least a fighting chance in court when these egregious retaliation acts are brought forward. So that's another tenant protection. And then lastly, one that I'm very proud of that was really, really hard to get through the General Assembly. If y'all know towing issues, you especially know that it's extremely hard to get towing bills through the General Assembly, especially related to Northern Virginia and Arlington. So I had to work this one very hard. I was working for hours in everybody's office, Republicans, Democrats. So HB 1287, I got that one out. And I also got some Republicans on my side to help me finally bring parity to Arlington County and all of the localities in Planning District 8 to allow us to permit those who tow and store in our jurisdiction. So there will now localities can have the authority to permit folks. That's huge. So that we are making sure that we are addressing predatory towing in a very meaningful and impactful and efficient way. And so one of the Republican members partnered with me, and he wrote a letter to the governor asking the governor to sign this into legislation. So or sign this into law. So I'm really crossing my fingers on that. But that's a bill that I'm really, really proud to bring back to Arlington. If you can just hang with me, bear with me. There's a lot of updates here. I'm almost done. Let me look. I'm
Take your
telling
time. You're doing fine.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
I've got a couple more, and then I'm out of y'all's hair. The other thing that I wanted to, if you can go to the next slide, is just a couple of budget highlights for y'all. We passed a really, really good budget funding our schools, increasing pay for teachers. As you can see here, I won't read this all to you. You can feel free to take a picture, but we centered our students, we centered mental health, the DD waiver, and making sure that we're supporting folks with disabilities. And then the Operation Ceasefire, it's a program to reduce gun violence and inform felons of their restricted rights and new responsibilities pertaining to firearms and ammunition. There's so much in this budget that we're extremely proud of. And we also had some bipartisan support in passing this budget. We do anticipate that this will come back, possibly with amendments, but we are going to hold strong on the budget that we passed. And you know, I'm sure I might get questions on this, but the arena was not in the budget, and something that I personally don't support. But you know, there were some questions about that, so I just wanted to kind of put that out there. But if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. We also have some stuff, other key items that were in the budget. We have some WMATA funding. I advocate for as much as possible. That is the center of so much within our economic system, within this region, to support people who are going back and forth to work, to school, and you know, just literally it's how we get around. Also helps to reduce the amount of cars on the road. So that's something that I advocated for, especially as a member of the Transportation Committee. And as mentioned, we put in a salary increase for teachers and support staff in schools. I know the support staff portion is a budget amendment that I put in personally, because I think that we need so much support for our youth, especially those who are suffering from mental health disorders and substance use disorders. And so that's extremely important. I also put in a budget amendment and got some funding, additional funding for the eviction reduction program, which helps people literally receive funding if they're facing eviction. So we've seen an uptick in evictions. And so I wanted to make sure that we got some more money in the budget there. We also got a lot more money in the budget for the Virginia Housing Trust Fund. You know, this has been historically underfunded. So we've been behind in trying to make sure that we're funding it to the fullest capacity. And so now that we have flipped the House of Delegates and the Senate, we were able to put more money in there and prioritize housing. So we're going to keep trying to do that, and then find other ways to fund housing in eviction prevention. And if you can go to the next one. And then just wanted to share kind of like the last thing is a few key legislative successes from this session. A few bills that I wanted to highlight from my colleagues that a lot of people in Arlington really care about, and I've heard along the campaign trail. One bill that I will say, one thing that I've heard along the campaign trail was about childcare. I know that we do have more money in there for childcare subsidies. I did have a childcare bill that I proudly got funded out of appropriations, which is really rare to do. And then when I got over the Senate didn't have any funding. And so it kind of got caught up in the process and left behind. So that's one that I have to bring back that I'm sure I can end up getting funding in the next year. But it would literally provide money to small businesses to match some childcare subsidies to their employees. So I thought that was really important to do a public-private partnership to make childcare more affordable for folks. So that didn't pass. It almost got there, just wasn't quite there. But I wanted to mention that because I heard that on the doors a lot. But we did get some childcare subsidy in there. And that's one that you'll be seeing me bring that back next year. But so for now, we got past HB1, which is our top priority, raising the minimum wage. And you know, one of the main focuses of you know, the Democratic majorities in the House and the Senate during the 2024 legislative session is keep Virginia moving forward. And so we were committed to protecting the rights and freedoms of all Virginians, making the Commonwealth the best place to live, work, and raise a family, and fighting for bold legislation, essential investments in the budget that will address critical issues like education, healthcare, reproductive freedom, economic justice, housing justice, justice reform, gun violence prevention, and more. So on that economic justice piece, that raising the minimum wage was so important. And so we thought that should be titled HB1. And so HB1 increases the Virginia minimum wage to $3.50 on January 1st of next year, and then keeps us on the path to $15 an hour by 2026. And so that is on the governor's desk, waiting to see what he does with that. And then that one is coupled with my bill with the farm workers, so we can finally include farm workers to receive that minimum wage, which apparently most of the farmers are already paying. So it's not going to put farmers out of business. And I got a lot of small farmers who support that bill as well. So I was very proud to drum up support there. And get 71 organizations to come out in support of the farm worker bill in addition to the minimum wage bill. Then we also have one that I'm very proud of. I'm a co-patron on. My colleague, Delegate Henson, who's just down the road from us, put in HB 171. This bill removes all barriers to individuals looking to obtain a marriage license, regardless of their race, sexual orientation, or gender. And so that's one that the governor actually signed into law. And so we're very, very proud of that. And I'm proud of Delegate Henson for championing that bill. The other one is HB 609. Delegate Price establishes the right to obtain contraception. And then the last one is HB 1040 by Delegate Bennett Parker. I was a chief co-patron on this. Very proud to have voted for this in subcommittee, committee, and then on the House floor. So I got to vote for it 3 times. And it allows members of a public body who serve as caregivers to participate in meetings remotely and be counted toward the quorum and much more. And so that's really important. As a member who has served on boards and commissions, I know how important it is for folks who are caregivers to participate in these local meetings. And so this was one that was very, very, very critical to a lot of people, a lot of residents who live here in Arlington and who are engaged in their community boards and commissions. And so you know, that's all I have. And if you go to the next one, you know, I haven't even really touched, on everything that has happened and everything that we've passed. We got a ton passed, and we did it in a good amount of time. We adjourned on time. We were strongly and united the entire session, and I'm very proud to have been a member. And also I was proud to work across the aisle on many pieces of legislation to get that through to improve the lives of all Virginians. And so here is a contact slide. And also I have Madison McCabe on here. She is my chief of staff. She is awesome. You can reach out to us. You'll probably hear from Madison or myself. That is all my contact information. If you can take a picture of that, feel free to reach out. And then also don't forget that, you know, if you have any legislative ideas for the next year, please reach out to me or your representatives. We're definitely going to have a bill limit next year. I think it's going to be 15. So reach out early for consideration. A lot of us already have some bills that we're bringing back. So reach out early to myself or your representatives to see if they're able to carry some bills. You don't have to do it today or tomorrow, but just early in the year, because we're starting already to consider bills for next year. And then that drafting deadline tends to be at the end of November, excuse me. So just make sure that you get there well before November if you have some legislative ideas. And so that's all from me. And I truly appreciate y'all and happy to answer some questions.
All right. I mean, I love that you ended your presentation by saying that's all for me. Like, you had one small thing that you did. Delegate McClure, I want to take a moment just to recognize some of the things that were said in the chat. I know that you're laser focused, but I want to make sure that you get your flowers and your accolades. Fatima says, Adele, I'm so proud to see you as one of Arlington's reps. We are truly fortunate, lots of wonderful news, some hearts. Thank you for your work. You are an inspiration. Let's see. Thank you for your work. I talked with a group of parents the other day that were excited about the DD waiver increase. Thank you, Delegate McClure, for the very informative report and for your strong commitment. Our chair of legal redress says your advocacy for vulnerable people in Arlington, not just in terms of number of bills, but smart work to get them passed, is unprecedented. Thank you. These are very impressive accomplishments. Thank you for serving, Delegate McClure. So the love goes on and on and on. Like, you did that thing. We're all so proud of you. So I have just a couple questions, and then we'll go on to our next speaker. But one of our members asked, what was the hardest part about being a freshman delegate this year?
Ooh, the hardest part. I feel that's a hard question to answer. I will say this. Somebody did ask me what's the most challenging part of representing HD2, House District 2, and I said living here. It's so expensive, and I hope I can live here in the long term and continue to represent folks here, but I'm feeling the same pressures as everybody else here. It's just the costs of living are continuing to rise, and it's tough. And so I will say that's my biggest challenge in terms of representing the area. In terms of being a freshman, I think that I knew, I've been in this space for a long time. I knew it was going to be a lot to juggle, but having to be in 6 places at once and you're, you not being there is noticed. It matters because you didn't vote, right? And so trying to prioritize, I'm up to present in this committee. I'm up to present 3 bills. And in this committee, they need me for quorum so that, I'm killing all these bad gun bills and passing all these good gun prevention bills. So what do I choose first? Do I run to this committee, do all these votes, then run back and present? Or do I present this? It's the balancing act that is just trying to find your groove. And then, you have a whole new team, and the team, I wish that we had a budget to have everybody year round, because we finally found our groove at the beginning of session. And I love that team. We had an amazing team of individuals. And then you say goodbye to them. You have one chief of staff, and then you start all over again. So you're just constantly trying to find that groove between the team, and you have to have a great chief of staff, which I do, who can help delegate all those different tasks and figure out who does what, and how we can cohesively work together. And so, like I said, carrying 15 bills, especially 15 bills as heavy as I was carrying, those were not easy bills to carry, especially if you're not an attorney. And, at one point in life, I wanted to be an attorney, but I am not a trial attorney. So to carry trial related bills or go in front of the courts committee, that's pretty tough. You get grilled by attorneys on that committee, and you got to know your stuff. You also got to know when you don't know your stuff, and to bring the experts up to the podium and answer those questions. And so that balancing act, and then trying to be there presently, be there present mentally, and then be able to answer questions, and then run back and listen to bills and vote on them. And then, you just have to have, I had an awesome team. I had a legislative director who literally looked at every single bill that came before me in subcommittee, committee. I mean, I was looking at 1,500 bills. And so you have to have staff, you have to have, like you all, folks who talk to us about the bills that are really important. If without you all, without advocates, it is really tough for us to do our job efficiently. So we need y'all. We need your voices. We need y'all to be watching and saying, this is a bad piece of legislation. Make sure that this doesn't get out, or this is a really good one, and we want to make sure that this passes. And that helps us tremendously, especially when you're communicating to my staff, who communicates to me. And every time I get a docket, my staff says, here are all the different bills, here are the different supporters, here are the people who oppose, here are the issues, here are the unintended consequences. And then I hear the bill. Sometimes I get to, I do read my bills. Sometimes I get to read in depth, and then, I make a decision. So it's tough, but we manage, and I'm very thankful that I'm not new, because if I were new, I don't know, I would have been drowning under that fire hose.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you really got your steps, like running back and forth, and I appreciate you giving all of our members a peek behind the curtain. One more question just for you is, how will you be spending all of your free time now that session has wrapped up?
Well, seeing as we get paid $17,640 a year, not that I'm counting, I have to find a job that's going to help keep me in Arlington. I think I'm getting close. And so I'll be spending my free time job searching. I wish I could do this full time. I really love this. I love this work. I love constituent services and talking to people and doing policy work. But you can't do this. You can't survive on $17,000 a year. My mom did it, raising 4 children. I know what that looks like. So I'll be spending all my free time looking for a job and working and trying to stay living in Arlington's second house district, paying this rent.
That's awesome. All right, Honorable Delegate Adele McClure, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And again, we're just so proud of you. We're looking forward to what you do next.
Thank you. And in addition to that, I'll be out in the community. So y'all will see me. I'm going to be giving the same spiel and telling people what happened during the legislative session. So thank y'all for having me. I truly appreciate y'all. Please reach out.
Take care. All right, next up, I want to bring up the Honorable Parisa Dehghani-Tafti. Parisa Dehghani-Tafti is a Commonwealth attorney for Arlington County and the City of Falls Church. She was first elected to her first four-year term in November 2019. She came to the office of Commonwealth Attorney with a 20-year record of criminal justice reform as an innocence protection attorney, a public defender, and a law professor. Commonwealth Attorney Parisa Dehghani-Tafti also sought the office because, in her own words, I always knew what I hoped for in a justice system, and so I finally decided to live inside that hope. Parisa has earned her BA in philosophy and comparative literature from the University of California, Berkeley, and her JD from New York University. Good evening, Madam Commonwealth Attorney.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
I'm good, delighted to be here.
Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. Madam Secretary, I believe you have a PowerPoint for me as well. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you to President Heminger and past President Spain and everybody who works to keep the NAACP moving. I am very proudly a member and hope to continue working closely with you all. If you could go to the next slide, please. All right, well, this is my staff. We are 19 attorneys, 6 victim witness specialists, 8 paralegals, 3 administrators, 2 IT and litigation support specialists, an office administrator, and a director of diversion and restorative justice. And we are the first office that I am aware of that has this role, which is essentially a social worker to help us vet cases for diversion and create diversion programs. And we, on a daily basis, are staffing between 5 and 8 courtrooms, litigating bond motions, putting on trials, reviewing competency motions, probation violations, and litigating red flag laws and working on expungement cases. We are trying to focus on prosecuting the most serious of cases and using diversion to prevent future crimes, and handling court dockets effectively and fairly. Next slide, please. So I have a holistic view of prosecution. Most people think of it as, most people traditionally would define the role of the prosecutor as prosecuting crime. I think that we need to incorporate victim well-being, community well-being, and fairness and justice in past, present, and future cases. So in terms of prosecuting crime, we focus on serious crimes that jeopardize the safety and welfare of the community. We hold people accountable for those serious crimes, and we divert cases to allow for rehabilitation and treatment as much as possible. Working for justice, we empower victims through innovative restorative justice practices and a prosecution model that focuses on victim needs, the constitutional rights of defendant, and building community trust. And in terms of fighting for reform, I think of this as reimagining the legal system, and centering the work on equity, and doing the work in a way that recognizes the history of our criminal legal system, and to repair the racial disparities and the trust deficits really between communities of color, immigrant communities, and other marginalized communities and the government. You all probably remember that when I first came into office, we had independent researchers look at the charging decisions, and they learned that in the 4 years prior to my taking over, Black people were charged at a 52% higher rate of seriousness than white people, even when you controlled for other factors. And we immediately adopted policies to address those, and really to limit the ability to get to that point again, as well as partnering with Veer Institute for Justice's reimagining prosecution, that we'll talk a little bit later about OAR, and the diversion program that we launched through OAR. Next slide, please. So I understand that the core function of the office, if you strip everything else away, is prosecution. And I don't ever think that the measure of justice is counting convictions, but we do have an impressive record of success at trial. And the reason why this is important is because we do things in a more fair way. We give all of the discovery. We give it electronically. We don't make people come into the office and take notes. And we also have an innovative peremptory strike policy in order to make sure that we are not demonstrating, or really it's designed to address explicit and implicit bias in the selection of jurors. And that's sort of one of the biggest issues that, in the history of criminal justice, is that people are striking jurors because they're Black, or because they're women, or, for whatever reason, to game the system. And we are getting these trial averages, but by taking us, although it's in number fewer, it's a higher percentage of cases, because we don't want to chill the rights of defendants to litigate constitutional motions and things like that. We're giving open discovery, and we are constraining our own power in terms of who we are picking for the jury, to make sure that we're not rigging the system. Next slide, please. One of the measures for justice is, what are our policies? And some of those, you all are well aware that we treat kids like kids. We never ask for cash bail. We charge with accuracy and restraint, which means that we limit the use of mandatory minimums, or charges that have mandatory minimums, so that we can really allow everybody to bring the arguments of what a fair result should be. And we limit the collateral consequences of charges and convictions, to make sure that people are not being separated from their families unnecessarily, or having future housing and education and employment opportunities taken away from them. And we also have been doing conviction review, even though the county hasn't been funding us permanently for conviction review. We have been looking at past convictions, particularly those involving faulty forensic science or bad, incorrect or inaccurate testimony regarding forensic science, and also those that have extreme collateral consequences that were sort of factually inaccurate. We are addressing those, and we have so far gotten one conviction reversed and prevented a wrongful deportation. Next slide, please. One of the things that we do, the sort of core of fighting for reform is, community partnerships. And you'll see that all of this is about bringing stakeholders to the table, working with others on evidence-based policies. A couple of things that I just want to highlight is that we have had now 2 expungement clinics, and I'm delighted that Amy Sitzel was a participant in one of these as a pro bono attorney, among other public defenders and other private counsel. But we partnered with the clerk of court. We partnered with several community-based organizations, the Coalition of Black Clergy. Thank you, Pastor Davis. And we were hosted by the Arlington Presbyterian Church both times. And it's an opportunity for people to come and really get free legal advice. And then, if they're eligible, file their cases right there. And so it's a one-stop shop for everything. And the sheriff's office also was available at the courthouse to make sure that they were doing fingerprints and making sure that they got their piece done, so that people who were eligible could get really truly everything done in one stop and without any cost to them. And an expungement is important because a record will adversely affect employment opportunities, like I said, the ability to get loans and things like that. And we want to make sure that, particularly for people who were arrested but not convicted, or people who were engaged in diversion programs and were held accountable in different ways, are able to make sure that their records are clean. I also want to really highlight the partnership we have with Moms Demand Action. We have been working to get a gun buyback program in place. I mean, we're a community and a country that is drowning in guns. We're starving for common sense gun legislation. Thank you, Delegate McClure, for participating in trying to pass some of that. And but we fully expect those to get vetoed, or at least I do. I mean, I'll be surprised if they don't. But we are still really in drowning in guns. And I know that buybacks won't solve all of our problems, but they are an opportunity to educate the community on gun safety. They do reduce a small number of guns that otherwise might be used involved in violence, might accidentally hurt kids or be involved in suicides. And so it's a really good opportunity to get a few guns off of the street, teach safe storage and support safe storage, and also to let the community know about red flag laws and have them really publicized in a big way. And we also have been reframing accountability through diversion, and we have a very strong partnership with Restorative Arlington, where they're at capacity right now, and we refer cases to them. Thank you, Kimiko Leidy, for steering Restorative Arlington for so many years, and for being a facilitator with Restorative Arlington. I don't know if Heather and Laurel are on this call or not, but thank you to them if they are there. And then, of course, we have our OER diversion, where we sort of target people who are not quite like behavioral health or drug court eligible, but who have repeatedly been involved in the system to try to break the cycle by providing very targeted things like therapy and job training and things like that with OAR, so that we can get people back on the right track. And I will say that it's very, very hard to calculate recidivism, particularly because we have small sample sizes. But in the over 200 and something cases that we've done since the beginning of my administration, if you take all of those cases and look at, those people's contact with Arlington, we're looking at like something like a 3% of them are having contact again with the criminal legal system. So it's working, and diversion works. Next slide, please. Some of the ways that I want to do all of this going forward is these sort of 5 requests that we made of the county board. The first is that we need to have funded a permanent conviction review unit. I said that we were able to support 1 conviction that was based on incorrect legal advice and save somebody from a wrongful deportation. We're still investigating a series of cases involving a lab analyst named Danielle Hankinson that where she testified incorrectly and in court, and we had a stack of 31 cases. We've been going through them, making notifications and asking for retesting in some of those so that we can make sure that we get it right or got it right. But we also now are in the process of we've just started receiving some notifications from the Department of Forensic Services about another lab analyst, this one who worked in the 70s and 80s and early 90s. And she was the subject of a number of exonerations that I got when I was at the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project. And what we learned in her cases was that she saved her like little scraps of forensic samples, but unfortunately, we also learned that she was falsifying her results. And so we are starting to get notifications on those, and we really need somebody who can work with me and has expertise to correct those, or to investigate and correct those. We want to support vulnerable communities, with an investigator who can investigate wage theft, but also who can, really help us tie up some of the loose ends of cases. We work with more than 5 law enforcement agencies on a regular basis, and some of them are more accountable than others. And so we want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can, and then protecting, folks from being outed, when they're being served a subpoena or something like that. We don't want a marked car with a uniformed officer showing up. We want to be able to protect victims and cooperators and witnesses from that, and have a more discreet process for serving subpoenas. So we have, like I said, as far as I know, the only sort of social worker. A couple of years ago, we got a grant from the Department of Justice, and the Director of Restorative Justice and Diversion Services. What she does is she vets cases, first of all, so she helps us make better decisions, because lawyers are, much better. I mean, lawyers are not as good at identifying who is sort of like the highest risk, highest need, and sending those folks to diversion. So she helps us identify the best candidates for that, but she also helps build relationships with different communities, because 65% of our court-involved population is actually not from Arlington. So as much great work as DHS is doing, they can't support a huge chunk of the people that are getting court involved. And so building relationships with organizations in DC, building relationships with organizations in Maryland really helps us be able to send people to appropriate treatment and divert people in a fair and equitable way. You know, we've heard a lot of talk about data. Prosecutors' offices are not traditionally designed to collect and produce data, and the case management systems that we use don't normally track those things in accurate ways. We are putting things in place to make sure that going forward, we can have good data on things like, you know, how many cases get dismissed and what are the reasons why, you know, what percentage of the cases get dismissed because of diversion and what percentage because victims are not interested in cooperating, that sort of thing. I would love to be able to provide that data. We need to go back in time and clean up a lot of data in order to be able to provide that. We've tried to build partnerships with organizations that can help us do that, so far without success. And then finally, we want to be able to support restorative justice. It's not free, and facilitators can't do all of the work that they do on a volunteer basis. And so we have asked the county for funds for $250,000 to support to really like build out capacity for conferencing, and that should cover about 50 conferences over the course of a year. And it's, at the end of the day, a lot less expensive than sending people to prison or sending people to jail over and over and over again. And it creates the recidivism rates are so low with restorative justice that it really does make the community more safe. Next slide, please. So we face some challenges with our space and with Restorative Arlington and with some of our positions. And there are ways though that you can help. And the first way is writing to your county board members, and I'm happy to send language so that you can nudge your county board members to support whatever or all of these requests, whatever is most important to you. And you know, obviously write to the county manager. Join Arlington for Justice. They have done amazing work and partnered with us for the expungement clinics. And I would invite all of you, but in particular members of the Criminal Justice Committee, and in particular the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee, to join our community advisory board. Those folks, you know, keep me posted on what's going on in the community and what you know, the community is talking about and needs, but also helps us get the word out about what we're doing. We have gone, they've helped me start redesigning our website. They had sort of fireside chats a few years ago, right when we were coming out of COVID, so that we can, you know, to reconnect with the community. They are helping sort of figure out what questions the community wants answered for data, and supporting, you know, the connections with the community. And I just want to end with words that aren't mine, but they're really powerful, I think. They are the reflections of two participants in conferences. And the first is a person who's been harmed. And this is part of a letter that she wrote to a judge. She says, "I believe our legal system is long overdue for a review of practices. Too often, considerations of the humans involved is lost in the focus on transactional and procedural rules and process. From my perspective, victims are not often made whole by a singular focus on punishment of offenders. I vote for holding individuals accountable, but also bringing people together when possible. In my experience, two people facing each other creates a new and often healthier dynamic. In closing, let me be sure to say that I not only believe in the rule of law, I count on it. I also believe that individuals are responsible for their actions, and consequences must be a requisite part of living in society. What I hope for is a system where action is swift, consequences are appropriate and humane, and outcomes bring people together and move us toward the goal of healing and providing motivation to amend lives. And then I want to just quote a person who was responsible and who engaged successfully and held themselves accountable. And what their response was after a conferencing process was, I needed the person I hurt to know why, to say this is why, and that I'm so sorry. That's it.
All right, thank you, Madam Commonwealth Attorney. So we do have a couple questions that have come in.
Yep.
Bear with me with all these monitors. Okay, the first one is, what role does your office play when there's a death inside the detention center?
So this is one of the reasons why an investigator would be so important. We obviously review the investigation that other law enforcement agencies have done, but we don't have the capacity to investigate on our own. And so we're looking at something that somebody else did. And so we're really looking for unfortunately not like what should be done, but really like looking to see if there's a crime. And that's sort of, it's a constraint that we have, is that we can't make recommendations in the way that the Community Oversight Board can and should be making. But we do look at things to see whether or not a crime occurred. But having an independent investigator who can be right there on the ground during those investigations would be extremely helpful to me, because then I wouldn't be doing it by myself.
Gotcha, we appreciate that. And I appreciate you calling out your advisory commission as well. We know the late Kent Carter served faithfully on that commission. So, we definitely would be interested in putting someone else there. In your first term, you delivered on safety, empowering victims, supporting youth, and keeping families together. Your commitment on no marijuana possessions, ending cash bail and reducing our jail population, reforming the discovery practices, as you talked about, the mental health docket, expanding the drug court, the efforts underway with restorative justice, eliminating civil forfeiture, and preventing unnecessary use of force. As you wrap up your second term, what are some of the accomplishments that you hope to add to that list?
Well, I would love to really delve deep into the work of the conviction review. I would right now, I think that our biggest, everything that I could do internally in the office in terms of policies, those things have been done. What we really need now is to scale the things that have already been done. We need capacity for restorative justice. We need capacity for OAR's diversion work. We need to create more diversion programs with more organizations. I'm really looking at deepening the work, but I also would love to see, for example, more things that support victims, like a restitution fund. One of the biggest problems that we have is that victims don't get paid their restitution until after somebody has served a sentence. And oftentimes, even then, it's not all of the restitution that they were owed. And court-ordered restitution is sort of notoriously not paid. But with simple, at the time that we had a study done with funding from the Arnold Foundation, what those researchers found was that $63,000 would literally pay off every single misdemeanor restitution that existed in Arlington County. That was a snapshot in time, but that was all of the restitution that hadn't been paid would have been paid off with $63,000. I would love to see sort of an investment, and obviously, that's misdemeanor, so it's smaller amounts. And if you look at felonies, it's going to be larger amounts. But I would love to see a fund where victims are getting paid at the outset. And then folks, as part of their accountability process, are paying into a fund what they can. Because the fact of the matter is that most people who come into our criminal legal system are coming in because of poverty and because of limited life opportunities and circumstances. And so they're not going to be able to pay. And I remember the second week that I was in office, I was observing court, and when a defense attorney, not a public defender, but a defense attorney walked up to me because their client was getting, was basically having a probation violation for failing to pay restitution. And they said, oh, well, can we step him back, meaning get him locked up for 2 weeks while he comes up with a payment plan? And my eyes almost like popped out of my head, because I was like, that's not happening on my watch, because 2 weeks in jail is not going to help him pay the restitution. So just come up with a plan. And it was striking that was the mentality that of the folks in the courthouse, was that it was totally okay to put somebody in jail because they couldn't find a job and couldn't pay restitution. And one of the pronouncements was that like, we're not having pauper's prison on my watch. And I would really like to see us providing the things that victims need, because if your car gets broken into and you have to pay $1,000 and you don't have $1,000, which most people don't, even in Arlington, don't just have the money lying around, they need that. And it can adversely affect the victim's life if they have to worry about that. But at the same time, if somebody can't pay because they have mental health issues, or because they can't get a job, because they don't have the education or the job skills, or they get jobs but they're not well-paying jobs, and they're working 3 jobs but they're barely making ends meet, though, like, we shouldn't be punishing those folks for not having the money. It's one thing when you willfully don't pay, it's another thing when you just can't.
I appreciate that. Our next question comes from Natalie Hall. She says, you mentioned that you're not being funded for case review. Are there good statistics on the numbers of cases that should be reviewed? How big is the problem?
It's a problem that we're never going to really quite have a grasp on, because there's so many wrongful convictions that are not going to be identified. But just to give you a sense, when one analyst testified incorrectly, we got 31 cases, and we had to basically like reinvestigate those cases to figure out what was the role of DNA in those cases, what was the role of this individual, what the testing that was done, and the interpretation, was that accurate? And we are still wading through those cases. That's in part because we don't have somebody committed full-time to them. So it's a collateral duty of somebody's and a collateral duty of mine. But the conviction review spot wouldn't just be reviewing old convictions. But the estimates of wrongful convictions are anywhere between 1 and like close to 10% of cases. And so that's potentially many cases. And every time we see, an officer get, resign or get decertified, I feel like we should be going back and looking at their cases. We don't have the ability to do that right now.
I agree. There is a rhetoric in the community that Arlington is becoming an unsafe place to live. Is Arlington a safe community? How do you know?
Well, by every measure that that newspapers and magazines use to, and I don't know exactly what those measures are, but by every measure, Arlington is one of the safest communities in the entire country, and it remains safe. I mean, we had some of the same challenges that we saw nationwide. We're not an island. We don't live on our own on a different planet, and so things that were happening nationwide were also happening here. But if you look at things like homicides, which are the easiest measure, we have I think we have had 1 so far this year. But we remain a very, very safe community. We have had ups and downs with carjackings, but we've had ups and downs with carjackings, for 25 years. We have ups and downs with, car thefts and car tamperings. But, if you look from like 2020 to 2021, things look bad because we were on lockdown. And then we came out of lockdown. But if you look at a 10-year picture, you see that it's sort of staying the same. And obviously the hope is that with more diversion, that it will continue to stay the same. And, normal recidivism rates are quite high, but in terms of the diversion cases, we're seeing lower recidivism rates. And recidivism is just like getting you back involved in the criminal system.
Could you talk about your proposed 2020, or could you talk about your upcoming proposed budget for the CJR program? Yeah, I'm not sure what CJR is. Maybe just the budget in general for your office. What are your budget?
Criminal Justice Reform Program. Yeah, so so we had a pretty big increase in our budget. Probably one of the biggest percentage-wise of the agencies throughout the county. But all of that was basically body-worn camera attorneys and body-worn camera staff. So it was something that is great. We love it, but it was something that we didn't have a decision in, and it was mandated, and so it was imposed on us. And I don't mean like anything negative by imposed, other than like it was a mandate, and so the county paid for it. And we also were an office that was extremely neglected in terms of technology and resources, and so we've sort of, that has been dragging, the office, like what the increases that we've seen have dragged the office into the 21st century. And they're, funding things like a litigation support person and, somebody to analyze data. But I haven't seen a permanent funding from the county for any of the initiatives that I have run on and been elected to accomplish. And those are, the 5 things that, I don't know if you want to put them back, but, the investigator, the conviction review attorney, the director of diversion services, some one-time money for data, and some consistent funding for restorative justice. Like those are the 5 things that I asked for from the county. I'm happy to send, a one-line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I also wrote the county a 10-page memo with multiple attachments because, I wouldn't be a lawyer if I didn't have attachments. We'll write 10-page memos. But, it's well justified, and it's things that the community has asked for. And so I need help from the community to remind the county board members that, like, when I won by a 14-point margin, this is what I won on.
Gotcha. There's at least one person in the chat that dropped their email. They are interested in writing to the county, so you may want to capture that. All right, so our last question, I want to bring us back to the detention center. Following the death of Daryl Beckton in 2021, our branch called on a Department of Justice investigation. At the end of last year, the National Association, the General Counsel, and the President, CEO, they joined our call in a call or calling on the Department of Justice to conduct an independent investigation. Earlier this year, the Human Rights Commission came out and said that they agree the Department of Justice should come in and investigate. From our vantage point, we imagine that the worst that could happen from a Department of Justice investigation would be, better oversight, improved conditions within the detention center, maybe fewer people stop dying. And so is our hypothesis correct? And do you agree that a Department of Justice, or what is the harm in a Department of Justice investigation?
I do not have the expertise to predict what the DOJ would find. But if it was me, I would invite the Department of Justice to come. And I don't say that with any shade or anything like that, but I would welcome the assistance and, if necessary, the budgetary support to do those things. So that would be my hope.
I will acknowledge that the sheriff has also indicated that he would fully cooperate with a DOJ investigation. All right, Madam Commonwealth Attorney, there is lots of love for you as well in the chat. I encourage you to take that and receive all of that. And for the questions that we weren't able to get to, would it be all right if we followed up with your office and maybe send it out to our membership?
Absolutely. And I can't seem to, I see that Jasmine has put her email in the chat, but unfortunately I can't seem to copy and paste it.
Okay, cool.
So if I can give my email, and
Sure.
if y'all wouldn't mind emailing me, I would really appreciate it. So I'm going to put that in the chat.
Awesome. All right, Madam Commonwealth Attorney, we appreciate your time tonight. I know that you're very busy, and we appreciate you addressing our members as always. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. I know I saw Mr. Mark Peters on. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but Mark, could I bring you up just for a moment to talk about the voter registration efforts that you're leading?
One sec there. Wow.
Okay, I'll come right back. Okay? I'm going to put our youth council advisor on the spot to tell us a little bit more about what's going on with our young people. Madam Advisor, are you there?
I can speak to it if you like.
Okay, all right, go for it. I'm going to bring you
So,
up.
so we've had a series of meetings. The next one, if you're so inclined, is going to be this Wednesday, the 20th at 6 p.m. I can drop a little Zoom link in the chat for everybody, where we're trying to do GOTV, but we're particularly targeting or micro-targeting, if you will, Black males. We've identified that as a demographic that a number of candidates and a number of groups are concerned may not be registered, first of all. In addition to that, they may not be properly informed to vote in their best interests. So while there are a number of voter registration drives out there, and there are people who are also doing voter education, this isn't just something that is local to the county or the Commonwealth. This is the whole country. And we want to get everybody involved and really flood the zone in terms of actually trying to get the link up for the meeting, if I could find it. In terms of getting information to folks, and we've reached out to the offices of both of our senators, and we have talked to some staffers from those offices in order to get them involved. And one of the outcomes of this communication is that where is the chat? There's the chat. We actually got Senator Kane to our local Feel the Heritage Festival during Black History Month, and he has done some outreach as well on his own as part of his campaign. But we also know that our other Senator Warner, who's not running this year, there's a staffer who's going to be getting involved with us as well. So
Yeah,
these are, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, could you tell us a little bit about like the organization that that you're working with, and kind of what the mission is? I know you talked a bit about it, but yeah, kind of help our members understand who you are and then what you're hoping to accomplish.
Well, yes, I'm Mark Peters. I am someone who has volunteered on political campaigns in the past with a certain senator from Illinois. I'm a DC native who went to school and worked in Illinois for nearly 20 years. And then a certain senator from Illinois decided to go run for president. And fortunately enough, he won. And around about 2010, I came back to the area and have been here ever since, working and volunteering on different things. And I also happen to join our local chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It's seated in Arlington County as well as Alexandria City. And currently, I am the voter registration chair for my chapter. But what I believe that President Heminger is talking about is that I've started a 501c3 of my own. It's called Progress for All. If you go to, I'll drop that in the chat as well, https://pfa.global. You know, it's a blog. I do monthly thought pieces on different ballot measures that come up, some in Virginia, some out of state, and other issues as I see fit. But it's all in the effort towards voter education, where we do a lot of voter registration in our Alpha chapter. We aren't doing too much. I don't think there's a whole lot of voter education out there. And that is what we're trying to do with getting all these different groups together, NAACP, as well as we're trying to reach out to the CBC. We want to reach out to the Urban League. We want to reach out to everybody possible to do this micro-targeting effectively, because it's one of the things that Stephen Horsford, who happens to be an Alpha himself, has identified and was saying that wherever there is a town hall, wherever there is an opportunity to meet and do voter education and talk about the issues and listen to the concerns of the constituency, CBC wants to be invited in so that they can, as part of this micro-targeting, engage with Black men and make sure that they are getting the proper information so that they can vote in their best interests and not against them. And that's what Progress for All is trying to do, working with, in addition to Alpha and NAACP, we're going to reach out to all these other groups and get this thing going. Now, it is growing, but I understand that there is a lot of money that's going to be coming into Virginia, because Virginia is going to be treated like the purple battleground state that it is, because granted that one party has control of both chambers of the legislature, the other party has control of the governor's mansion, and there's a lot of issues locally as well as nationally, even globally, that can make this thing go anyway. So we're trying to do what we can to make sure that voters, particularly Black males, are informed so that they vote in their best interests.
Thank you, Mark. I wanted to just recognize you. You know, I was on a call with you a couple of weeks ago, and you know, I was just so impressed with like your leadership and initiative. And you're right, NAACP has identified Virginia as a priority state, and so lots of resources are about to be flowing in. The coalition that Mark is leading is getting bigger and bigger by the day. There's some information on an upcoming call on Wednesday. I want to invite all of you to attend if you are concerned about the upcoming election or you just want to do your part. So Mark, thank you for the good work that you're doing. I appreciate you, and you can count on our support as well.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, because as we often say, this is the most important election of our lives.
That's right.
And I think about that, and it's like, okay, why? You keep saying that. There are a number of outstanding issues that do not get resolved. And so the problem gets exacerbated, and it can grow and grow and get worse and worse. So we really have to put a foot down and start to fix some of these things and to face these hard questions that we haven't answered yet on issues that are relevant, like I said before, not just to the county, not just to the Commonwealth, but to the country as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark.
All right. Thanks so much, sir.
Appreciate you. All right. I'm going to bring up a couple of our committees. We're almost out of here. How about political action? Would you like to update the membership on what's going on in the PAC?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Just to build off of that voter engagement update. So on our political action committee, we've been working very hard on that as well. So since the last update, we've been reaching out to our affordable housing partners. That is kind of the biggest partner that we have in reaching residents here with just voter registration and education information. And so we've been reaching out to our partners to kind of discuss how we can reach residents with information during the primaries, and also how we could start planning for the effort over the summer where we do door-to-door knocking. So kind of the biggest way that they've identified to reach voters in the meantime is to participate in food distribution events that they have for different properties. So we're gonna probably within the next couple of weeks just send out a survey to all of our members and blast it out to different groups as well, just to get a better understanding of potential volunteers who would be interested in supporting with these efforts and the door-to-door efforts that we do over the summer as well, and just to know kind of what the availability is, what the interests are, if there's more need for training and things like that. So definitely look out for that from us in the next few weeks. And also, if you have any questions or if you're interested, if you want to just just share your interest or participate in our committee meetings, we do meet once a month, second or third Wednesday, depending on the month. But I'll put my email in the chat, and you can always feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. That's all I have for us today.
All right. Thanks, Madam Chair. Awesome as always. All right. I noticed that one of our elected officials joined, our County Board Member Susan Cunningham. Would you like to say a couple words to our membership this evening?
Just to say thank you for letting me listen in, and I'm glad to be able to be with you for part of the meeting tonight.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Next up, I want to bring up the chair of our Environmental and Climate Justice Committee and also our past president. Mr. Chair, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I don't have much. Hopefully the monthly report went out to everyone. We are looking closely at the budget that just came out for Arlington County, and in some of the areas as it relates to environmental side of the house. There are some concerns, as you may recall. We had the climate policy officer here a few months back, and one of the pointed questions that we had was, in the upcoming budget, what are you going to be doing as it relates to programming in outreach? And from what I have seen in the budget to this point, as far as the climate policy officer's position, I don't see anything there. So it's a work in progress. As it relates to the budget, we've had a couple of meetings, the Environmental Climate Justice Committee, and we're brainstorming the next approach that we're going to have. But all in all, there's still some work to be done. Good partnership with Eco Action Arlington. I went and represented NAACP a few weeks ago at a roundtable where they wanted to bring in stakeholders in a number of the communities, to really talk about how they can engage more intentionally as an organization, along with the partnership with NAACP. And it was a number of folks there and well received. So outside of that, if anyone wants to dive into environmental and climate policy justice, feel free to reach out to us. I'll drop the email to the committee, and please join us. We meet once a month. The schedule kind of varies because our group of folks have competing schedules. But yeah, join us and come lean in. We have a lot of work to do. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. All right, we got one more update for you all. Let's bring up the chair of Criminal Justice and Legal Redress.
Hey, everyone. Mike, I'm not sure if there's something particular you want me to talk about, but just to give everyone an update on the criminal justice side, we previously talked about, we talked to Sheriff Kiros about having a community advisory board. We've been having some great meetings with people in the community who are interested in being on that committee or nominating people for that committee. He's interested in having people on a committee too. We met with a member of the Alexandria Sheriff's Community Advisory Board last week. And I'm really excited. I think we have a good group of people who are interested in supporting that effort. On the legal redress side, we have a lot of complainants who have issues where they can't afford counsel. So we have been trying to find them private counsel, but if anyone has any connections, I think what we need to work on next is trying to connect with some maybe law school clinics, nonprofits, ACLU, that type of thing. So if anyone has any connections in that area and wants to let me know, please reach out.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Madam Chair, for all that you're doing. I appreciate it. I wanted to let all of you know that our next meeting is going to be April 15th. We're going to have a school board forum. So save the date. All 4 of the candidates running in the endorsement vote have agreed to come and speak to our membership. So that's going to be Monday, April 15th. We'll hear from all 4 of our school board members. We're actually going to start that meeting a little bit early. We're going to handle some business from 6:30 to 7, and we'll have that forum from 7 to 9. So as we close out Women's History Month, I wanted to just read a quote from the dear Maya Angelou.
Excuse me, President.
Yes, go ahead, Madam Chair.
I had one thing from the Education Committee that we're having the collaborative event with the Arlington Public Library and APS for this film screening of The Right to Read, and that will be April 18th at Wakefield at 6:30 p.m. and it's 80 minutes long.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that update. I appreciate it. All right. So Maya says, we all should know that diversity makes us a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter their color. So thank you all, freedom fighters, so much for being here this evening. I appreciate your time. I'll see you next month. Take care.